director, Heidi, is an old-time friend. We studied actually together. We never worked together, but we studied together. And she came with the idea because she made this film before, in 2002, I think, and asked me if I would like to produce that. And that was, to be honest, the first time that I really heard about the guy. That was 2 years ago. I mean, I didn't actually know anything about him. And then I started to look at the net and got some speeches of him, and I was fascinated immediately from the guy. The president is a powerful man, but he doesn't have the power about his own schedule. And that was the problem that we faced there. So we had to change the way we could tell the story. And went more over these public speeches, which of course is also the absolutely strength of this guy, because the way he talks and the way he's doing his speeches it was absolutely fascinating. Because when you see them there, he never reads from something, he just goes there and he knows what he wants to talk about, and then he starts to talk. It's really fascinating. And so we put, I think, the focus on a little bit on that. But it came out of a situation that we didn't get what we wanted.
Before I knew that there was a lot talked about his salary, that he has a salary of 8,000 and he gives 80% of it. In the movie, only Steven Taylor pointed it out for a second or something. And so he didn't make like more deep changes. He left the salary as it is. He didn't make the salary smaller, change the law. And he gave donation, and donation is a capitalistic idea, it's not a socialistic idea. So in the end, he's still a politician, you know?
Of course he is, and I think he is also telling in the garden very much about his analysis of capitalism and communism is quite interesting, I think. No, he is, you know, I'm not so much interested in this if he gives away 80% and that he still drives the Beetle. Actually, he's not driving the Beetle anymore. It's there, but he doesn't have the time anymore to drive it. So, but these are the stories that are around in the world about him. And I'm far more interested in what he's actually saying and how he is. I think that's the fascinating part about him. He's a politician I think we all would like to have. He's so much this one-to-one, you know. He's actually what he's saying that he is it. And that is what is so fascinated me about the character. And if he spends now 80% or 70 or whatever of his salary to the public, or if he's driving the Beetle, I mean, that is not what I'm really interested in.
Do you think that there is someone who could continue his legacy in Uruguay?
Well, the one who followed up, he stopped. He stopped on the 1st of March. And somebody from his party followed him up, who did it already 5 years ago. So, yeah, by the way, they are doing actually very fine. I mean, probably not all view the figures of Uruguay and what they are doing, but they are doing very well. They are actually, besides Chile, the country in South America that is also economically doing very well at the moment.
I don't know what you know about the subject, but I know that they still have the secrecy of the banking, which is not a socialist point of view. How do you think they cope with that? And they're between Brazil and Argentina, and they have a lot of corruption problems because of that law and the interest.
Well, I think one of the most interesting and probably also explaining the film a little bit scene is when he is in his office and Heidi wants to know something. They get on his nerves. I mean, he doesn't want the film team around him anymore when he's saying that he has this problem with Argentina. Actually, I think it's very open now. It's said that they don't like each other at all. And they have quite a lot of problems in forming this South American Union. Well, he was a Tupamaro, so he was in jail for quite a long time, and then the party that he existed is also coming out of this Tupamaro movement. So I think that is maybe also one of the reasons that you cannot compare somebody like that with a normal politician, because he didn't go to the party when he was 17 and learned how to speak. He was in jail for, I think, altogether that moment came into parliament as a parliament member. I think you also see that in the film. There is a flashback into that time when he first comes to parliament in 2002, I think it is, 2003. Can I answer your question?
Yeah, okay.
What is again interesting in seeing his story in a country like Romania is that you see a fighter for a left cause, because they wanted to do a socialist revolution like in Cuba. That was the plan. And they failed. And he's nowadays an anti-politician, so he's somehow outside of the system. You can see a bit of populism in his approach of things. But he's the nice kind of populist, because he has this good past, because he was a fighter for socialism, because he was involved in this fight. But he's an outsider. He presents himself as an outsider, even if he is still a politician. He's a senator now. He finished his term as a president and he became a senator. And he's now campaigning for his wife, Lucia, who wants to become the mayor of Montevideo. Regionally, I don't think Uruguay plays a big role. The conflict with Argentina is an old one, and it's an economic one. And nowadays it's even personal with Cristina being not so popular with the Pepe. What his role is, interestingly enough, regionally now, is to be a moderate. Because you have guys like Morales in Bolivia, like Maduro, who's trying to continue the Chavez government, Correa in Ecuador, who are much more radical. And Mujica is the one who's saying, look, we should be attentive to keeping a democratic regime, for example, in Venezuela, because Maduro is arresting the opposition leaders and stuff like that. So he was an extremist, if you want, because he was fighting with guns. They were not peaceful. Guerrilla was not a peaceful movement. And now he's a moderate.
There's a very nice story about him at this time when he was at Romero. I don't know if these all kind of legends are right or wrong. They obviously went to, I think it was a shop or a gas station or something like that, and grabbed some money there when he was at Romero. And then he heard that there was also the extra money, the tip from the people who worked there, and then he brought home the whole money back. So both these stories are all right. But it shows a little bit this legend about this man. And of course, you're totally right. You can only understand a guy like this when you show where he comes from, and that was actually also in the film the biggest problem in the beginning, because we planned the film and the editing differently, or the director planned it differently, without telling the story before. It only came into the film after half an hour. There was something going back to the 80s, and it didn't work at all, because for an audience like, let's say, European audience, you have to build up the guy in the beginning. So that was the reason why we then later switched and re-edited the film and started more or less with the flashbacks into the 80s.
And I think the director also did a movie on the Tupamaros and Thoughts, but I didn't see that one. The director?
Yeah.
She did a movie on the Tupamaros also.
Well, she did a film which was called Tupamaros with him in 2000. So there are 3 time levels if you want in the film. There are the archive footage from the moment when the prisoners were free. Then there is the Tupamaro film, where you see Pepe and her selling flowers, and out of that period, that was the film before, and then the period which we shot now.
If there are no more questions for our guests, then I would